So does each story take place in Binghamton?
So they're all loosely based on Binghamton. I don't know if anybody in Binghamton would say, that's a Binghamton story, but I did want to capture, to me, an upstate New York vibe, which is a small town where people know each other, and some people stay, and some people come home, and there's a level of closeness because people have known each other for their whole lives, and there's places they go. But, in some ways, there could be big city stories, too. I think it's really about what home is to you, and what home is, and what it looks like.
Interesting. So this is another Myles Tanzer interview with Ben Tanzer, the best dad ever. And
go on.
And somebody's going to be joining us for our next clips. Noah Tanzer, my brother, and the wonderful assistant. So now he's going to be doing some short stories. Ben Tanzer will be doing some short stories while Noah Tanzer is clinging on to him.
Like a little barnacle.
So,
okay.
What is...
So no, I probably should have blocked my face, right?
What's the new collection called?
Well, thank you for asking, sir. And by the way, just so I can pause for a moment...
Get out of your mouth.
You can't suck your thumb on video. Anyway, just so you know, today we are stopping at Baby Got Books, the home of Tim Frederick and crew.
Do you know what the website is? Because the last time you didn't know what the website was.
Man, I don't want to embarrass Tim and get that wrong, but let me say how appreciative I am for him to host one of the stops on the New York Stories tour, and I want to thank him for all of his support over the years. He's been terrific. So we are at Blog Tour Stop. We are Baby Got Books. We are very thankful. And what was your question again? I'm sorry.
What is a book called?
Oh, good, right. So this is sort of a dual thing. We are talking about So Different Now, which is a group of short stories. And they are actually, or were actually, maybe I'll ask more about this later, they were written sort of in response to an earlier collection I did with the Chicago Center for Literature and Photography called Repetition Patterns. However, one other thought before you cut us off here. Part of this tour is that CCLaP, or Chicago Center, merged So Different Now with Repetition Patterns to create sort of a hyper-literate, arty, suede cover, beautifully illustrated book by the Laura Zumowski. And we're also talking about that, and that is the New York Story. So thank you, sir.
Cool. So does it have a website yet? I want to push you.
You can go to clapcenter.org.
So let me get that straight.
Maybe it's .com. We'll check later.
Let me get that straight. clapcenter.com?
Possibly. That sounds right.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Because org is for organization.
Right. And he is sort of a nonprofit, but I do think it's .com. But we'll check later.
But so let's cut to the case.
Right. Should we?
This is now.
Yeah.
No, let's just ask you some questions.
I know, but why don't we?
So, what does the cover mean to you of this book?
So here's the cover. I can show you quickly. This is very black and white, so it's not super helpful. It's not in color. But what it means to me is, what does it mean to live in a neighborhood? What does it mean to grow up in a small town? What does it mean to grow up in a place where, you walk out the door and you can walk to school or the playground?
Not the cover repetition pattern.
Oh.
The
New York Stories?
Yeah.
Well, so New York Stories I referenced earlier, it's actually this slice of my neighborhood growing up, these series of stores, this liquor store.
I think I've seen it. So, did something happen to that?
You're setting me up. I like it. Yeah. So, amazingly, when Laura shared that photo, that picture with me, it was the week about a year or so ago where Binghamton got heavily flooded. I think it's almost already a year, where Binghamton was flooded. Binghamton being the town, I guess it wasn't a year, maybe it was last September, where Binghamton got flooded. The whole time, I grew up on the Susquehanna River, and the whole time, we love the Susquehanna River, very long. Yeah. Anyway, Susquehanna River flooded downtown, or flooded the south side of Binghamton where I grew up, and those stores were underwater, as was my elementary school. It never happened the whole time I was growing up. I don't know what that means.
Do you think this flood, it's kind of like a metaphor, ruined your childhood memories?
That's a good question. Is the flood a metaphor?
But for example, when they flooded MacArthur, the library, do you think the library ruined all your memories of you?
Not ruined, but this is a great question.
Washed away?
Right, here's a great question. I don't think washed away, but I think, though, when you're a writer, you get flooded with memories, and those memories become stories. So in that way, are you tearing up? It's a very strong metaphor. Yeah, that's a great question, man. Yeah, I think what happens is, especially with a collection like this, is that it is a metaphor because you do get flooded with different ideas and you start trying to collect them and mold them and make them into something. And then, as I said, something like the flood happens, and you start looking at those stories differently. I said to Jason one time, it never occurred to me I might do Pettis, yeah. I never occurred to me I might do a third set of stories, but then I started thinking, maybe there's a third set that has something to do with the flood. I don't know what that means, or the death of a town, or the burying of a town, or the loss of a school. So that's in the back of my brain somewhere.
So,
last question. I think it's bedtime.
No, it's not a question.
Oh.
So, I hope you see Ben Tanzer with his blog tour, and good night, folks.
Rock on, blog people. Party on.
Party on. Party rocking in the house tonight.